Okay, it's San Diego Comic-Con 2014. This is the opening night, Thursday. I am Matt Staggs for Savudu.com, and Robert Masello is here.
That would be me.
Thanks so much for joining us. You are here promoting a few of your books. You've got 3 written right now that folks can check out.
Right. Well, there are 3 books here, yes, with Random House. There's Blood and Ice, which I will be signing shortly. And that's about the Antarctic and the Crimean War. Then there's the Medusa Amulet, which is a book about the Italian Renaissance, the French Revolution, and the Third Reich. I leave no stone unturned. And then the most recent book is the Romanov Cross. And that's a book about the collapse of the Romanov dynasty in 1917, 1918, and also the rise of the Spanish flu, which coincided with that at exactly the same time. And I sort of merged the stories together, and it has my usual kind of a supernatural element to it also.
I wanted to ask you about that. You've, I know in the Medusa Amulet, there was kind of a supernatural aspect to that story. Could you touch on that?
Yeah, that one's about everlasting life. I mean, what happened was I read the book that Cellini himself, the Italian sculptor, wrote, and it was his autobiography. It ends very abruptly with malaria sweeping the country. I'm riding across the swamps toward Pisa. And it ends. And I thought, what happened? I loved that book when I was a kid. So I went back and I thought, well, what happened to the rest of the story? And I finished it the way that I wanted to finish it. And yes, I also wove in a lot of stuff I know from growing up in Chicago, actually, because it takes place at the Newberry Library also in Chicago, and then all over Italy and France and Europe in general.
Do you get to do a lot of traveling for these?
I knew you were going to ask that. I did do a lot of traveling in my 20s and 30s. I'm trying to remember it all now. But now, I do travel when I can for research. But I got to admit, a lot of the time, God bless Google. I can sit in my office in Los Angeles, and I can call up any piazza, any square, any piece of statuary, any piece of artwork, and study it and get it right. Now, I do say that because people ask, I get about 90 or 95%, maybe I'm exaggerating, but I hope not, of the facts in my book are correct. If I'm talking about art or architecture or history, it's almost always true. But then I weave something else into it. So I do tell people, don't ever try to write a book report based on the history that you're picking up from my book. There's an old saying, the truth is stranger than fiction. And when I'm doing the research, the stuff that you just kind of trip over. I mean, when I was writing about the Romanovs in the Romanov Cross, of course, you've got all the material with Rasputin, who was thought to be indestructible, among other things. And I do write about that in the book. I mean, this is a man who, when they decided to assassinate him, he was poisoned, he was stabbed, he was shot, he was strangled, and then he was shoved under the ice, where it turns out, actually, he was still alive after all of that, but he drowned when they found him under the ice. So Rasputin had a reputation as being a necromancer, as being a prophet, as all kinds of things. So it sort of naturally falls together that way. Cellini also had an interest in the occult and tried to conjure spirits in the Colosseum, in fact. And he writes about that in his autobiography.
Let me ask you how you developed your bit in history. How did you get interested in this? Was this a lifetime interest?
Yeah, I think I always was interested in history. When I was a kid, I was always reading history, and I won the history prize in my high school and that sort of thing. I loved reading it, but I also loved imagining, other scenarios. I don't write alternative histories the way that some writers do, but there are certain historical events that so captured my imagination, one of them being the Charge of the Light Brigade. The Charge of the Light Brigade figures very prominently in my book, Blood and Ice. And when I read about it, it's even more staggering than what you have seen in the Errol Flynn movies.
Where can people find you online?
They can find me online at my website, which is www.robertmasello.com. And I love to hear from people, too. I'm on Facebook and things like that, though I don't spend as much time on social media as I should.
Well, I appreciate your time. Thank you.